What's going on, everybody? Happy holidays and season's greetings. My name is Ben and welcome back to the bench, guys, for another episode of the 12 Sprues of Kit-mas. Today we are pushing on, so let's go ahead and grab the box and see what we have in store for us today. Now, last time we went ahead and built the 1/72nd scale Hasegawa Jaguar Mark 1A. Really nice kit, to be honest, guys. Had a lot of fun with that, so let's go ahead and hope that we have just as good of a kit here in the second day. Punch on through here and see what we can find. Kind of dig around in here and, oh, okay, here it is. Pull that out. Oh boy. Okay, guys, looks like we have one of our first World War I aircraft. It's the Albatross D1 by Rodin. Now, I don't know much about Rodin, to be honest, but I have heard some pretty troubling things. I've heard that their plastic doesn't like to go together very easily. There's a lot of flash, requires a ton of cleanup, and I can say that, yeah, I've seen that here in the plastic. I don't know how it's going to come together. I'm really kind of worried about it, but we're going to keep on it. We're going to see what we can do and just hope for the best. Now, I had mentioned a little bit here, we have a lot of different color schemes and painting options to do here. I think I'm going to go ahead and go with the natural wood grained fuselage with the camouflaged wing and the pale blue undersurfaces. That's, I think, going to be kind of a fun painting scheme to do. And it's actually very reminiscent of what I did on my previous World War I aircraft way back a couple years ago. I did an Albatross D3 in that exact same coloring. So I don't know how that's going to go, but that's my hope. We've got all the colors for that anyway, so we should be able to jump in and get that done. But before we can do that, we need to go ahead and get on the construction. So we're going to go ahead and jump in here and just start putting things together. We're going to go ahead and do some basic construction here. We're going to build the engine, going to go ahead and start working on the fuselage, the internal cockpit area, and then we're going to go ahead and start painting those areas too. Because like I said, I do want to go ahead and do a wood grain finish, and that's going to require some oil paint. At least, well, that's the only way I know how to do it. So let's go ahead and dive into our first time lapse, see what we can do, keep our fingers crossed. Let's just get going. All right, everybody, we are back, and I gotta tell you, this kit is definitely living up to that rumor. This is a very difficult kit to build. So far, I have broken some pieces when cutting them off the sprue. Things don't really want to go together. All the locating pins, if there are any, are extremely soft and very difficult to get fitting into where they're supposed to go. It's just, wow, takes a lot of work, guys. But we are getting through. We really are. Now, I've gone ahead and switched over to the painting phase. I needed to go ahead and do the internal cockpit and fuselage area. And to do that, we've mixed up a custom custom made color with a little bit of some oil paint. We're using raw umber, we're using burnt sienna, and yellow ochre. I've mixed them together and made this cool like honey colored wood grain effect. I don't know if it really shows up here much on camera, but I think it's going to be a pretty cool design to do. The only drawback, of course, to oil paints is they do take some time to dry. So I'm probably going to go ahead and get out my heat gun, put it on the lowest setting, and off camera just kind of help to dry some of these oil paints just to make sure I can move on without really skipping a beat. Now that we have the parts more or less dry, we're going to go ahead and start gluing down some of the internals. Now there's not a lot of work here on the cockpit. There's just not a lot of parts. You're not really going to see much anyway. So we're just going to go ahead and install the flight control stick, the rudder pedals, and the chair. And that's pretty much all we have to go in here. Now we could go ahead and do some scratch building and add some consoles and add some other type of instrumentation and all that, but I don't really want to fool with that. This is 1/72nd scale, so you're not going to see a whole lot of the internal detail. That's probably why there's hardly any in the kit anyway. So what we're going to do is just going to glue down the basic parts and pieces. We will add some seat belts though, because when you look down through the cockpit opening, I mean, you do see the chair, so might as well add some seat belts. Now to do that, we're just going to add it with some Tamiya tape. Nothing fancy here, guys. You're not really going to see a lot of detail, so I'm not going to bother making buckles and making clasps and all that. I'm not going to do that. All I'm going to do is take some Tamiya tape. We're going to cut it into thin strips that look about right in scale, then glue them down to the cockpit chair, and then that's about it. We might come back and paint them if necessary, maybe add a wash or two just to kind of give them a little bit of dirt, a little bit of grime, but otherwise, that's it. We're not really going to worry too much about any of the other parts and pieces, just going to throw some belts on there and call it a day. We're going to go ahead and switch over to our next time lapse, and we're going to continue working on the fuselage. I want to go ahead and get that all buttoned up, get the engine painted and installed, go ahead and start fixing up all the seams, and then getting that wood grain on the fuselage exterior all set, ready to go. So back onto that time lapse, guys. Let's push on. It's going to be a fight, but we'll get there. Moving right along, guys, we are finally ready to go ahead and start working on the wings. Now, the fuselage is more or less together. We've got that wood grain finish on there. It's not really perfect, but it's good enough for what we're doing. So now we're going to switch over to the wings. And like I mentioned before, the wings are go ahead and have basically a 2-color camo up on top and a single pale blue on the bottom. I see here that we don't have the exact paints that they call out for. So instead, we're going to go ahead and just substitute what we have in our stash. And that's going to be a pale blue by Vallejo. And then for the upper surface, we're going to go ahead and use a Tamiya whole red, and we're going to use a Vallejo field green. That's going to get us close enough, and it's going to look pretty similar to what I see on other images online and whatnot. So I think we're going to be able to really get this all squared away. Now, of course, the underside color is going to be that pale blue, and we're going to start on that first, get all the wings kind of painted up with that color. Then we'll go ahead and prime the wings themselves. We're going to use a white Standardized primer so the colors seem a bit more vibrant. I'm figuring if I use a gray primer, since it's such a small aircraft anyway, it's just going to make everything look too dark. So I think using a white primer should be a good way to go. Then we'll just lay down our camo colors, get some detail painting done on the fuselage with some gold gray, and then, well, we'll just move on, guys, and see what else we can do. One step at a time, guys. One step at a time. Let's keep going. All right, everybody, so we are one step closer to being finished. I'm not going to say this is my favorite model because it is not. It's fighting me every step of the way, but I think we are getting there, and that's what's important. So to kind of take a break from some of the more arduous tasks here, we're going to switch over and paint on some wood grain for our propeller. And to do that, we're just going to do a real simple procedure. We've already taken some Tamiya desert sand. We've gone over the entire propeller. Now we've taken some red brown and we've actually streaked it, adding some wood grain. And now we're going to go ahead and overcoat that with a nice clear orange, which will help to kind of give it that lacquered appearance. And then we let it dry and we're going to be good to go. Now the pros of doing this instead of using like oil paint or whatnot is that this dries faster. This is all acrylic. So this is going to dry relatively quickly. The oil paint, that does not dry very quickly at all. So this way we have the ability to go ahead and paint up our wood grain effects. We can go ahead and finish off any detail painting, get it attached, and we're good to go. But now we need to go ahead and get back onto it, guys. So let's go ahead and try to attach the wings, get the landing gears attached, and see how that goes together. We're going to get this done. Let's keep going, guys. Let's do it. Oh boy, guys, we are almost there. We are getting close, step by step, guys. We've got the wings attached. We've got all the support structures. We've got the lower wings attached and the landing gear structure as well. Boy, this was not an easy task. Those wings did not want to go on. The locating tabs didn't fit where they were supposed to go. I needed to open up some of the holes so they actually would be even able to get where they need to be. Still didn't line up correctly. Had to go ahead and resort to shaving that off and shimming the wings, adding in some super glue to go ahead and really tack it in place. I broke some of the struts trying to get them installed, but it's done and I'm happy with how it is. The wings aren't exactly perfect. You know what? I'm happy they're on. I'm good with it. And now that we have the landing gears, we have all the structures down there, we're going to go ahead and install the wheels. I did a little bit of masking, making sure that I had the white center hubs on those wheels and the black tires. Now we're just going to go ahead and glue them on. I've noticed though that they don't really fit very well onto the actual axle. So I've had to come in and kind of trim off the axle so they sit closer to the structure. They just were way too far out. It didn't look right to me. So I went ahead and trimmed the axle down, and they are fitting much better. So I think what we're going to do now is we're going to jump back into a time lapse, and I want to go ahead and get everything coated with gloss. That's going to prepare us for decaling. And then once that's dry, I'll let it cure for a couple hours. I'm going to come back and I want to go ahead and try to do some rigging. Now that's going to be tough because I've only rigged 2 aircraft. And they were both 1/48 scale. I've never tried a 1/72 scale aircraft before, and I don't know how it's going to go. But we're going to try it. Why not, right? We've come this far. We might as well take it a little bit farther. So let's go ahead and jump into that time lapse, get that gloss coat applied, and then let's go ahead and try some rigging. All right, guys, the rigging is complete. That was not easy at all. Very tedious, very time consuming. I had a couple of moments where I wanted to take the kit and just chuck it into the wall. It was fighting me every step of the way. Some of the support structures on the wings ended up breaking again, so I had to go ahead and tack those back in place, fix up whatever I could, repaint a couple of them, but we have most of it rigged. We actually left off 2 control wires. I just didn't feel like putting them on, and I didn't put any wires into the back tail section either. I just kind of burned out. So we're going to go ahead and jump over here now to decals, and this I'm hoping is going to go a lot easier than the rigging did. We don't have a lot to put on. We've got a couple of the national markings, we've got some of the unit identification markings, and of course we have the serial number for the aircraft. That's about it. I've never used rodent decals. I have no idea how they're going to go. So let's go ahead and jump back into that time lapse. Should hopefully be the last time lapse of the day. We're going to get the decals on there. We're going to go ahead and let that dry. Then we're going to go ahead and do a little bit of weathering on it using some panel liners. And then we're going to hit it with like a satin top coat. And then we're going to call this one finished. Let's keep it going, guys. We'll see you in a sec. All right, guys. Whoa, boy, we are finished. That was a long road, guys. We have finally finished our 1/72nd scale Rodin Albatross D1, and I am so happy to be done with this kit. Not that it was a bad kit, it's just a very difficult kit. Let me go ahead and bring it out for you, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Here it is, the 1/72nd scale Albatross D1 by Rodin. I don't even know where to begin with this one. We had issues with part fit, we had issues with parts breaking, we had issues with parts that had a ton of flash or undershot, and I had to kind of build them up. Just a really difficult time there on the bench. But we did end up getting it together, so I'm happy about that. We even ended up rigging it. Now, I did lose 2 wires on the very back part of the wings. I just didn't feel like doing that, but everything else though is as close as I could possibly get them to the diagrams, and well, it looks okay. I'm happy with it. Zoom in here for you for a quick close-up. You can see Rodin gave us a lot of really nice detail for that engine, so that's a plus for sure. Cockpit detail, very much lacking though. I did add in those seat belts, not that you can really see them very well, but they are in there. I've got the pale blue undersurface, we've got the wood grain on the fuselage, and then we did the whole red with the field green. I think it looks okay. Decals were a little finicky, they're kind of thick, they took a lot of microsol. I think my favorite part of the aircraft though is the propeller, faux wood grain, and I think I did a decent job on that. As long as you take your time, you really study your parts, dry fit everything multiple times, you can get through one of these. But with that being said, guys, we are done. We are finished. Day number 2 is in the bag, and I'm pretty happy to have made it through this first ever Rodin kit. Not that it was a great kit, but it wasn't terrible. It just requires a lot of patience. That's pretty much it. And I think at this point though, we are good to toss this in the display case. I'm happy. It's going to go right next to my 1/48 scale Albatross D3. I think it's going to look nice there. And we're going to go ahead and move on to build day number 3. Now I do have 2 additional Rodin kits there in the stash. I don't know if they're going to come up or not, but if they do, at least I have an idea what I'm getting myself into. So until our next episode, guys, you know the drill. Go out there, get yourself some bench time, have some fun, build something cool. Happy holidays to everybody out there, and we'll see you back here on the next episode of the 12 Sprues of Kit-mas here on Ben Builds. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you soon.